Hi there, welcome. My name is Nicole with Morning Chores. Today's video, I'm giving you a real-time raw to-do list. This is my spring to-do list that I do every spring, and I'm gonna walk you around the property and you're gonna come along with me as I share what I need to get done around the property and the house and in regards to our chickens and our rabbits and our garden, just to show you kind of how I stay on top of things and maintain things so that they don't get out of hand and out of control. Plus, I'm going to give you some tips along the way. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we begin, I wanted to share a tip, and this is something that I learned from my grandfather on how I try to stay on top of things around my house, my home, my property, the homestead. And this is something you could really apply to anything. You could apply if you run your own business. You could apply it to the maintenance of the inside of your home with the cleaning and the cooking and the laundry. I apply it to pretty much anywhere I can because it really does help. I do notice in society that we tend to want things without having to maintain them or take care of them. And then we let things go and those things pile up and pile up. And then it gets to the point where there are so many things around our houses and our properties and just in general that we need to get done or we need to fix or we need to replace, and it gets so overwhelming and so expensive because there's so many things that need done that we get overwhelmed and we either just let it go and things keep piling up, or we move and want new, or we throw it out and just buy new. And I've been guilty of this in the past too. But this is a little trick that I learned from my grandfather and I apply it and it really does work. My grandfather used to be a plant manager for the automotive industry, and he would get moved around or transferred to different factories around the United States, specifically factories that were not operating efficient enough. So they would bring him in and they would have him bring order and efficiency back to that particular factory. So the first thing he would do on his first day or his first couple of weeks on the job is he would get a notepad with a pen and he would walk the floors of the factory and he would talk to the actual line workers, the men and women that are actually building the products and making them. And he would ask them, what do you love about your job? What do you dislike about your job? What would you like to see improved? He actually got the issues from the people working on the floors rather than getting them from upper management. I believe he talked to upper management too. He talked to everybody. But what he would do is he would make a list, and then from that list he would make a plan. And this is how he would get these factories working more efficiently and help, the factory workers be more satisfied in their jobs as well. So when he shared this with me, I thought, I could really apply that to managing my own home, my own property, and that's what I do. So at least once a year, preferably twice a year, I like to do it once in the spring and once in the fall, I get a notepad with a pen and I literally just walk around my property and I notice, oh, the trim around the door needs painted, or oh, the swing set, it needs restained this year, or I need to really work in the woods, there's some limbs down and if I clean that up, it would be a lot more fun for the kids to play and it would look nicer. Even inside my house, I'll walk around my house and say, oh, the bathroom sink has a leak, that needs fixed. Or I need to wash the windows again, they're looking dirty. And so just by walking around the home and just taking a look at what needs done or around your property, you can also do this with your homestead. If you have a barn and you have animals, maybe there's some gates that need repaired around your property in your barn. Or the hay is getting low up in the loft and we need to get more hay. So it's just a really easy way to stay on top of things that need done. And that way you can tackle them much more quickly and they don't pile up and it's more affordable and it's more manageable. So today we're just gonna walk around the property and I'm gonna do exactly what my grandfather did in those factories. I got my notepad, I have my pen right here, and we're gonna walk around and I'm gonna pay attention to what needs done, what needs fixed, what needs replaced, what do I need to do to manage and maintain this property. And it's not a pride thing in an arrogant way. I don't want to maintain things to show off. My intentions are really to take responsibility and take care of the things that I have. So it's more of an ethical issue. It's not a show-off issue. You know, I've been bestowed this home and this property, and I'm really grateful for it, so therefore I want to take care of it. One of the things on my to-do list was to wash all of the outdoor furniture and clean all the cushions. Now the cushions I washed back in the fall, and I've had them in storage, so they're ready to go. This particular furniture, I had it pressure washed when we had a gentleman come pressure wash the deck and part of the house, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But I went ahead and had him pressure wash this because I've tried scrubbing it with all kinds of different things to get that green film off that grows on it, and I could never get it off. So I went ahead and had him pressure wash it, and I'm so glad he did because it's so white and it just turned out really, really well. The next thing on my list is the fire pit. The fire pit is more of a want versus a need. So whenever I have one of these on my list, I go ahead and write it on my to-do list. So I'm just gonna write fire pit redo. And I always put a star next to my wants. So these are not needs. They're not things that need to be done. It's more of a want. But what I'd like to do is redo the fire pit. I'd like to redo the stone. We'd like to take up a lot of the grass around the area and lay down stone. The stone here would actually be fine for another year, but some of it is starting to crumble. So we're definitely gonna have to redo this in the next probably 2 to 3 years. But I would like to do it this year. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put it on my to-do list, and it's something I just have to discuss with my husband. We've got to look at our budget and how much it costs, but it's just one of those things I'd like to do, but I don't have to do. Let's move on to the next. The next thing on our to-do list is to re-stain the playset, slide, and sandbox. This is something I have to do every 2 years. I did not do it last year, and it's definitely needing done, as you can see in the close-up footage. So I ended up finding some stain, thanks as a recommendation of my mom. I went to a local store, and this stuff was heavily marked down, and hopefully I have enough to cover it all, but this is something I need to get done before I plant in the garden. So on my to-do list, I'm going to write stain playset. So while we were looking over this stuff, I noticed that this board is missing, so I need to repair that. So I'm just gonna write underneath my little playset note, repair board. That way I know it needs done. All right, let's continue our walk this way and see what needs done over here. So over here on the deck, we got it power washed. I mentioned earlier in the video that we hired a power washer, and he came and power washed the deck. So this is done. I cleaned all of the furniture myself, and the only other thing that may need done is once a year I wash all this siding on the back of the house, but it's one of those things that I usually do in the summertime after the garden's planted, so I'm not going to add it to my spring to-do list. That will be a summer list. Let's go this way. So we had hired a pressure washer guy to come, and he did this whole side of the house. This was covered with some green scum stuff, and we had washed it up as far as we could reach, but we do not have a tall enough ladder to reach up to the peak. So I called around and found a guy that was very reasonable, and he did this plus the deck and the white lawn furniture, and it was worth it. So I can scratch that off my list and we can move on to the next thing. One of the biggest things on our spring to-do list this year was to re-fence these apple trees, also take out all the weeds that grew up around the fence, and then re-mulch. And thankfully we already got this done. We had a really warm week a few weeks ago, so we went ahead and just got this all done, so I can actually cross this off my list. And we did not have to prune the trees this year, but we will have to prune them next year. So that'll be a new thing to add to next year's spring list. The next thing on my spring to-do list is to deep clean the chicken coop. This is something I do once in the spring and once in the fall. And this is something that I have so ingrained in me that I don't really need to write it down on a to-do list, but for the sake of the video, I will write it down. So I have videos on this, on how I deep clean the chicken coop. So if you want more detail, you can check those out in the description box below. But this is something that I try to get done usually in April to May, and then I do it again in October to November. So that is the main thing I need to do with the chickens in the spring. The other thing I usually try to do is move their fence, which I already did, And then I also change their waterers to ones that I use during the warmer summer months. Next on our list is the garden to-do list. And again, these are things just like the chicken coop that are just kind of ingrained in me and I don't really need to write them down. But the main things we need to do for the garden is my husband comes in and hand tills this, and then the kids and I go through and pull out all the roots of the weeds that we can possibly get out. And then every other year we mulch the garden. So this year is an off year, so we don't need to mulch the garden. So that's less work for us, which is really good. So the other thing that we wanted to do with the garden is possibly fence it in. So I've been getting a couple quotes for some fencing guys to see what we can afford, what fits in our budget, and what we want to do. And the jury's still out on whether we're going to do that this year or not. It just really depends on the budget and how much it actually costs. And let's face it, everything is more expensive these days. So we really have to pick and choose what is a top priority. The main reason I want to fence the garden in is because sometimes I do like to let the chickens free range. It cuts my feed bill in half, but I don't let them free range all the time just because they do get into things and they go to the bathroom all over the place. So it's not as romanticized in real life as it is on the internet, but I do let them free range sometimes because it is good for their health. They tend to eat a lot of grubs and grass and other things that are good for their diet. So once in a while I do let them free range, but if I let them free range, they cannot go in the garden, especially during growing season, or they will eat all my tomatoes and all of my things that we want to eat. So that's the main reason I want to put a fence up. Next on my spring to-do list is to clean the front porch. That includes removing all the firewood that we did not use this winter with the wood stove. And then it also usually means that I clean the siding, so I do the same thing that I do on the back side of the house. Yes, I could have had the pressure washer guy do all this, but it would have cost more. And this is something that I can manage on my own, so I just do it. So I usually wait till it gets a little warmer and I'll wash all the siding and all the windows. And then I also wipe down the furniture I have on the front porch and then sweep it. So I just write on my to-do list, clean porch, and I know what that means. So if I write down all those things, that would kind of overwhelm me, just seeing all that on my to-do list. But clean porch, I know I need to just accomplish all those things. One of the things on my to-do list this spring was to find a new rabbit hutch. My daughter does rabbits for 4-H, and we already have 2 current rabbits and she's getting 4 more, so we needed more space. So I ended up finding one on Facebook Marketplace, pretty reasonable. So we have that kind of here waiting, and one of the big jobs this spring is to move the rabbits that we currently have out of our garage back outside. We had them in the garage during the winter months when it was really cold out, so now it's time to move them back outside so we can clean that corner of the garage out and get them settled out here. Next thing on my to-do list is to plant bulbs in the woods. We planted some tulip bulbs, and I can't remember what the other ones were, but we already got some of them planted, and then I did buy a few more at the store because they were on sale. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get those planted before it warms up. It's still pretty chilly here where I live, so I have a little bit more time that I can get those planted, and we'll see if they sprout. But another thing on my to-do list, and this is something that is just perpetually on my to-do list every year, and that is to clean out the honeysuckle and the grapevines in our woods. This is something that we've been working on pretty much. We didn't start doing it right when we bought the property. I don't think we started doing this until maybe 3 years after we bought this property. But we learned that honeysuckle is very invasive, and what happens is the honeysuckle takes up all the ground floor on a forest, and new trees don't have any space or enough sunlight to grow up and grow big. So we have been working on removing the honeysuckle for the past 5-6 years now, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and it's something that we just can't get done in 1 year. Maybe if my husband was retired and the kids were moved out, you know, we could probably commit more time to doing it, but it's just something we have to kind of fit in this season of life. So I try to work on a section at least once a year, one time in the early spring before all of the growth comes up, and then I'll do it again in November, December. But I've been working kind of down by the road and trying to clear that out. So I got all the little stuff cleared out kind of down on this side. So my husband needs to go through with the chainsaw and get the bigger honeysuckle because they're just too big that I can't get them with my clippers. So that's something that we're just always working on, and so I do not write that on my to-do list because it's just in the back of my head and I just know that it needs done. Another important lesson I've learned is that when you have a home and you have property, and if you are getting into the homesteading lifestyle, so you start adding livestock and you add gardening and all these different things, you add more maintenance and more things to your plate. So I've learned that it's really important to add these things slowly, get really good at maintaining smaller things. So whether it's just a smaller to-do list, you know, maybe when you first buy your property, just focus on maintaining your home and your property before you start adding things like a garden and livestock. And then I've mentioned this in some of my other videos, but when you get into the homesteading lifestyle, it's very easy to just get really excited and want to just add all these things to your plate. And then before you know it, you're spread so thin and you're only really giving 50% to this and 50% to that and not really doing things thoroughly and well. So it's really, really important to move slowly into the homesteading lifestyle. You don't want to add things too quickly. So, you know, maybe the first thing you add is a garden, and add a small garden and get really good at maintaining that garden space and do that for 2 or 3 years, and then add something else in like chickens, and then get really good at the chickens. I really think that's probably one of the most valuable things I've applied to our own property and our own lifestyle. And even with kids, I mean, we have kids, and as a mom, and I'm sure if there's moms watching, you guys all know that you get sucked into the busyness of momhood and you just feel like you need to sign your kids up for all these different activities, and you have this really busy lifestyle where you're never home, you never get to eat dinner together. And I have found myself getting sucked into this, and I still do from time to time, and I always have to recheck. You know, my husband and I sit down and ask ourselves, is this activity good for our family? Is it good for our kids? Because we do think it's important that they should be involved in things, but it's just a matter of quality versus quantity. One of the last things on my spring to-do list is to clean out the shed, and I already have stuff piling up right here, so it doesn't look great. But usually after I plant the garden, I will take everything out of the shed, go through everything, pitch things that are broken or no longer usable. I'll sell or donate things that we're not using, and I really just try to pare down, and I do that every year, usually twice a year. I do it again in the fall, just to stay on top of our stuff. And then I will clean all this out, and then we have a nice clean shed that we can use for storage. I'm gonna walk over here and I'm gonna show you the last thing on my to-do list. The last thing on my to-do list is to pick up the yard. So there's usually like little toys and things. There were some things over by the fire pit and by the play set. I try to encourage the kids to pick up their toys when they're done with them, but it doesn't always happen. And sometimes I'll do usually a sweep through the yard in the evenings before we go to bed in the warmer months, just to make sure everything's picked up. And that way the yard just looks nice and tidy. And, you know, I want to encourage them to take care of their things. But this is my son's construction site, and this stuff kind of stays out because he likes to make construction sites with it. But again, like, I try to tidy it up at least, have it stacked in a corner. So that way when people drive up and back up, they're not running over toys and things. And I just think it's good practice to take care of your stuff. So that's what I'm trying to do.